having some money to save or to put aside to pay for these clinicals is something that you guys, I feel like, should know ahead of time, so that when you go ahead and try to look for clinical, it's not a complete shock how much they're going to charge. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't seen any of my videos before, my name is Natalie. I'm a family nurse practitioner, and basically the goal of my channel is to help pre-nursing, nursing, as well as FNP students get through school as easily as possible. I also take a look at personal statements and review resumes, so if that's something that you need to have done, please take a look at the description box down below, and there's a whole process telling you how that can be done. So for this video, I wanted to address whether or not FNP students have to pay for a clinical. And so that all really depends. So for some people, they don't have to pay for a clinical, and for others, they do have to pay for a clinical. So with that being said, there are certain schools that part of their curriculum or part of what they offer is to find clinical rotation sites for you. If you look online, I'm sure they'll have a list of schools telling you which ones do and which ones don't. But with those schools, you're probably going to have to pay a little bit more tuition, I'm assuming, just because that's definitely a more task of a process that they have to do instead of, you finding it yourself. But I'm assuming that if you go to a school like that, that they would take care of the cost, and it would probably be within your cost to some degree, and they would take care of it. I'm not 100% sure because the school that I went to did not find it for us. We had to find our own, but I'm just assuming that. But definitely do your own research if that's something that you are wanting to have taken care of. If you are going to a school that you're responsible to find a clinical site, it's very hard to find clinical sites in general, let alone to find a clinical site that is completely free. I think for most students who find clinical sites that are free, I would assume that they may, know somebody in the field, or they're a friend of a friend and they're just doing a favor. But what I've seen most of the time is that a lot of clinical sites that take in a lot of students are charging students, which, there's a lot of controversy of should they even charge, because you should be giving back to the community and all that stuff. Each practice does their own thing. It's kind of hard to argue with, whatever they want to do for their practice, because at the end of the day, we are still students and we do need to learn, but we are going into their practice, into their life, so to say. So whether they want to charge or not is completely up to them. But obviously whether or not you'd want to accept to pay for that is a whole other thing. But I just wanted to say that there are very different ranges depending on where you go. Certain clinicals cost, a couple $1,000s depending on how long you're going to be there or how many hours you need, or some are just a couple $100, or some are free. So there's just a really wide variety out there, and I think that's something that you guys should know before getting into FNP school, because obviously tuition is a lot in general, but then obviously having some money to save or to put aside to pay for these clinicals is something that you guys, I feel like, should know ahead of time, so that when you go ahead and try to look for clinical, it's not a complete shock how much they're going to charge, especially if you're going to be there for a long time and trying to get many hours. I'm sure that they're going to charge more. So from what I've seen and what other students have told me, and what we've seen in general going to clinical, probably maybe the cheapest I would say would be around $200 to $300 for, I want to say, maybe 120 hours or so roughly. And I've seen some people get charged about $2,000 for maybe a little bit more amount of hours. But it just really depends on who you're working with, what specialty you're in, how long you're going to be there. But I just wanted you guys to make notice that most of the time there's going to come a cost, and especially if you are able to, if you're able to find these clinical sites without a third party, I'm assuming it's going to be cheaper. Or what you can also do is ask your school to give you a list of students that went to previous clinical practices in your area to see if they still have an affiliation with your school, and then you can go there and then probably negotiate a charge or whatever. But if you're going through sites like NP Hub, you're obviously going to have to pay the preceptor as well as the site itself. So those are just things to keep in mind. There can be a huge range of price, obviously probably depending on what state you're in. might increase or decrease the price, or how saturated NPs are, or how many students there are, or again, if you're competing with other schools that already have affiliations with these clinical sites. So there's a lot of variety, but just keep in mind that you might have to pay for maybe, if not one, all your clinical sites. So just try to save some money on the side or negotiate a cost, and see, the earlier you can find a clinical site on your own without having to use like a third-party site, probably the better you're gonna be able to find one on a cheaper level, because you're gonna have more time and not feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be delayed if I don't pay this site and get a site by tomorrow. So that's just something to keep in mind. As soon as you get into school, start looking for clinical sites. And again, if you're an FNP student, you need a family rotation, you need an adult rotation, you need a women's health rotation, and you need a pediatric rotation. So, you know, if you're a mom and your kid goes to a pediatrician, see if you can go over there and, you know, have your preceptor be over there. So just things like that, keep in mind. And yeah, hope that helps, just to get you guys thinking and saving and all of that. But unfortunately, that's part of the process. We have to pay a little bit more to get the clinical we need and to get it on time, because the worst thing you probably want to do is delay yourself even more just because you can't find a site. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to always, always believe in yourself, and have a great day. All right, bye guys.